This is Benjamin Smith with the Safe School Audit, completing the EDL 955 course requirements in the fall of 2012. Over the course of our discussion today, we're going to be looking at the demographics of the school and of the city of Abilene. We're going to look briefly at buildings and equipment. We're going to show some current construction that's going on, potential work that could be done. We're going to look at the Applied Sciences building, which is our agricultural, VOTEC, and automotive and woods area. We're going to look at some main facility minor issues, and we'll look at some recommendations that our maintenance director has made. Abilene High School has 485 students in its main building with 15 alternative and 22 virtual school students. They are considered in the population, so it's a little bit higher than 500. We are evenly split pretty much with males and females. 34% of our students are on free and reduced lunch. 94% of the student population is white. 4.4% are identified as other, with 0.63% African American and 0.42% Hispanic. The city pretty much mirrors the school. Population is 6,844 according to the 2010 census, 94.9% of which are white. 4.7% are considered Hispanic of any race, less than 1% African American. 10.8% of the households are in poverty in Abilene, with the median family income $61,146. Notable residents of Abilene are Wild Bill Hickok and President Dwight Eisenhower, who graduated from Abilene High School in 1909. Abilene High School was opened in 1959 and for the most part still in good repair. Most of the things I found doing this audit are of minor concern, but we will have some structural issues to talk about in terms of where things could best be placed for safety issues. Classroom equipment is pretty much up to date. We began a one-to-one iPad initiative this year that we call A-Learn, and our heating unit is in good shape. We'll talk about that later, and you're going to see some window air conditioner units that we have in most classrooms that provides the air conditioning in the warm. Here's what the heating registers look like throughout the school. This is what forces air, the warm air, through various locations in the building, but it doesn't heat incredibly evenly. We'll show you that later. Every window that is in a classroom has an air conditioner unit to it. This provides also some noisy and uneven cooling throughout the warm months. And you'll notice up above those windows there's these wooden shading units. Those are designed to be a stylistic way of providing some shade in the building. But those have become an unforeseen issue in other parts of the school. We'll get to that later as well. Currently on the table for discussion, if we're going to replace anything, district-wide we've been looking at what it would take to replace the current unit with central heat and air. Abilene High School's portion of that has approximately $2.4 million to replace. So that's a pretty heavy issue. Our current construction that we have going on is not being done by any contractors right now. We have our students who are building a storage shed to be used for building trades. Typically they build a house. This year they're building their own storage shed that is surrounded by an 8-foot tall chain link fence. Here's an image of it. You see with the scaffolding. So this is a pretty tall unit. It's about 25 feet long by 20 feet wide. Here's a picture inside where you see that the structure and support are still going on and they're putting up the inside of the wall. This is going to be a pretty solid unit, and the kids have done a fantastic job with it. They also took into consideration drainage. The area where this is located is kind of the main drainage area for the entire high school parking lot. And so to keep water from building up, they took into consideration how they were going to pour the concrete, and it drains out into this practice football field here. Our discussions about construction have been going on district-wide. Matter of fact, a board presentation was made just a couple weeks ago. HDK Architects out of Manhattan have been the ones we've been working with, and they've been helping us to assess the size and space and how it's used in our schools. Mostly we're looking at square footage in classrooms and whether or not there's enough space for students in our building. We've determined that we are lacking in space at Abilene High School. We also have discussions about the location of the office in relation to parking. What I mean by that is this. This is the main office, the main entrance to Abilene High School, but you see there's no parking along the main street that is the closest to it. This is a state highway that goes along the north side here. Main office is located in here. There's no line of sight to see out to the street or to see anybody coming in. So from the main office, you cannot see anyone who wants to enter the building. We consider that to be a problem in 2012, that probably not a huge issue in 1959. This is a designated parking area. The student parking goes further to the west here. Our discussions at this point have been, if we took this area here, the main office, we could probably squeeze 2 classrooms in there, rebuild this office, and perhaps put it right here. That way we could see the parking lot, we could be close to the main entrance. Problem with that is that most of the student population in the school is on the opposite side, so we'd be a distance away from student activity. So there's a little catch-22 going on. This is a broader view. You can see the entire student parking lot, how it is segregated from staff parking, and also want to draw your attention to this big rectangular building across from the tennis courts. This is our Applied Sciences building. This was built in the mid-1970s, and so it's nearly 4 decades old, and it houses our automotive, cabinet and furniture making, and our metals and welding shops and here I try to represent it visually so you can see the size. This is the automotive shop here. This is where the cars are worked on and learned about. This is the wood shop. Cabinet and furniture making goes on here. It's a long but narrow shop area. They have a metal shop here. There used to be a wall separating the two, but about 20 years ago they took that wall out to create extra room, and the architect is kind of concerned about that, and we'll get into that in a second. So as we go into that building, there are some minor fixes that we need to look at. One is to replace the floorboards along the wall here. This is just a visual thing. It looks tacky without it. That's not a structural issue, but it would be nice for our kids to have a nice looking restroom. That would take a few $100s to fix in just a couple hours. This is a missing door on a restroom stall, and it'd be nice for that to be closed up there. Perhaps about $500 worth of materials to replace the door, plus a support arm that goes over it, and maybe 3 hours to fix. Part of our construction discussions is that we need to look at that wall area again between the metal shop, which is this darker gray area, and the wood shop, which is a little bit differently with the more of a yellow tone to it. The architect has a major concern about this because we have materials in this part of the shop that can start fires and things over here that can catch on fire. Hasn't been an issue yet, hasn't been an issue for 20 years, but one of those things that we might want to look at, especially in terms of how we might redesign that area. You see that the equipment in the wood shop is close together, so kids have to be really conscious and the teacher has to be really attuned in with how kids are using their materials in there so that it's not interfering with other students. It's a space issue, and the materials are close together and the equipment is close together. This is a maintenance assistant named Danny, and I put him in there to show a size reference as to how much space there is not in between these buildings and the building equipment. I also found this electrical wire that goes to one of the machines here. It's suspended from the ceiling, and I found out that that is allowable within code. Concerned me when I took a picture of it, but as long as it's not draping over a ceiling fixture or a light or what have you, it's perfectly okay. If we were to redo this, we'd figure probably a different way to provide electricity, maybe coming from the floor to go to those units in there. Outside the building, we have a water outlet that goes from here, from the building, that goes eastward to the street. Over the course of the last couple decades, this area has sunk down, and so the area by the drain pipe is actually lower in elevation than it is out by the street. And so there's been a huge water backup in here that has caused some flooding in the past. About halfway down on the right side next to the grass here, we had cut out that concrete so any backflow of water would actually go through there and then go into this ground drainage unit there. So it's a piecemeal fix right now. We go from this building to inside the main building, and mostly we have some minor fixes that are needed in here. We have a stairway, a small stairway that looks very, very ugly. Just over years, this thing has taken some abuse, and this would cost maybe $500 and quite a bit of time to fix it, depending on what's actually wrong. So we have to pay attention to that. We have, as we go down that hallway, we have this water fountain that's not in use. Very inconvenient for students to not have it available. But over the years, the things that have been spit and have been washed down this drain have clogged up a pipe that's under the building. So we actually need to physically turn the water off, cut it out, and replace it all the way to the sewage. And so that's going to be something that takes quite a bit of time through contracted work, be fairly expensive, and we need to do it when students are not in session. Plan is to have that done over Christmas break. A little bit further down the hallway, I took a picture of a mat here. The mat is not very pretty, but it's covering up this, which is cracks and missing tiles. To replace all these tiles here where there are areas that are chipped out, that's something that we can do. Just takes a little bit of time to do it, and would be better looking than just having that. Again, this could be a summer project, just materials that are on hand. It's going to take several hours to do it. Pointed out these earlier. These are the wooden shading devices. These are meant to be stylish rather, and provide shade to the building. Unforeseen consequence is that it hangs over some of the parking for our kitchen workers, and birds roost on it and have caused some damage through droppings on their cars. If we were to remove these from the facility, wouldn't be very expensive. It would just be a little bit time consuming. This metal beam right here is actually structural to the school, so we have to be careful about that too. As we go into the main part of the building, the restrooms, because of age, are suffering from this. And you see that there's some mortar that is missing from the area on the walls. Again, I didn't take any pictures in the girls' bathroom, but this is something that we could handle locally. If we wanted to purchase in volume mortar for the entire district, we could probably do that. But this is something that does not have to be handled by our district maintenance. I can have school district personnel do that. School personnel do that. This is something else that we see throughout the building. These are old water spots in some of the ceiling tiles. Not very common, and it's easy enough to replace the tiles here, but there is some evidence of water damage in the past. Additionally, we have some older bathrooms. Again, the school was built before there were ADA issues, and so this is a minor men's bathroom in a side hallway, and you see that this doorway is not very wide, and so this is not handicap accessible. This one is handicap accessible, but it's kind of inconvenient. But it is wide enough for a wheelchair to get through here. Matter of fact, the stalls in there have been modified to be handicap accessible as well. This is an issue that we have as well. This is our nurse's office. This is in that main office part that I pointed out earlier. The nurse does not have more than this one bed here. She's in our building part-time, but only the one bed here. And there's no dedicated water source that goes to this nurse's office. There's a bathroom that's not too far away, but it's shared by the women of the building. And if we have any student needs, then they go in there as well. But there is no dedicated water or restroom facility that goes to this nurse's office. If we were to rebuild the main office area, that's one thing that I'm going to be pushing for very strongly, is that we take that into consideration and focus more on providing a nurse's facility than was in the original design. Now again, for somebody to walk in the building, they have to come in here, and this is where the main office is. This is also the area of least heat from that steam unit. The steam unit is located right here. I'm sorry, it's right over here. But when it forces the steam out, it goes in an area that begins here and then around the school this way. And the area next to the unit gets the least heat. I'm sorry, I said this has the least heat earlier. That has the most heat, even though it's the furthest away from the unit. And so we have to turn this room up to 80 degrees to get this classroom here, which happens to be a choir room, above 70 degrees. And so this room is chilly while this one is burning, and it's a huge issue, but that's the only way that the system actually works. Pardon me. That's the only way that the system works. So we have to force air through the entire building just to get it here, and it creates an uncomfortable environment. So additionally, if we're to heat the gym, we have to turn the heat on to the entire building. So it's a very inconvenient, not very cost-effective way of doing it. As a matter of fact, here's the biggest recommendation that our maintenance director has. He says that he would like to see the district start moving away from steam heat and window units and go to more efficient forms of heating and cooling, which would be individual units or units that will maybe power 2 classrooms, so that the area around the school, and this also includes the district, can be heated more appropriately. So, and cooled more appropriately in a more efficient and easier to control manner. So overall at Abilene High School, we're not seeing that we have too many issues. With money that would be gained through a bond issue, and again, we'd have to have the political will in the city to do that, and at this point I don't know if it exists. But we don't have the general fund money laying around to replace the heating and cooling units throughout the district. So it would take an increase in funding and revenue to be able to do that. And it would take at this point, would take a bond issue to try to pass to make that happen. But that's the plan for the future. And hopefully, if we need to add to that, we can throw in the construction for a new office area, reconvert some areas in the school for more efficient classroom usage. We'd probably take a Spanish classroom, relocate it in another part of the building, and create additional classroom space for our fax classes, which have really, really small room right now. I appreciate any comments you'd give us in the comment sections below, and I appreciate your time.